Welcome everyone to week 2, a conceptual framework for mixed methods research. This week we're going to be answering these two key questions. What is the essence of mixed methods research? And what are the assumptions that form the basis for mixed methods research? For those of you with some experience with mixed methods research, this week will be some very basic information and perhaps even a review. For others of you, it is important to make sure that we have an understanding of the foundational assumptions to mixed methods research in order to move forward. So the context for the text that we will be reading from Plano Clark and Ivankova, as well as the additional reading by Hesse, Bieber, and Johnson for this week, focus on this growing need for a grounding of mixed methods research in consistent understandings and also training in the field. Assuming you've already read both pieces before watching this video, you'll also notice that both pieces talk about how the field is situated currently and some challenges to that, both of which we'll talk about next week. Last week we spoke about some of the characteristics of research coming out of Hatch's text, and I just wanted to include that slide here as a refresher for you all, because understanding these two approaches to research will help form the foundation for mixed methods research. You can tell from the two readings that the researchers' understandings of mixed methods research differ even between those two sources and pretty widely, as we'll notice next week once we start really digging into different definitions for mixed methods research. But both of them to some extent consider what is quantitative research and what is qualitative research. From the chapter from our main text, even Plano Clark and Ivankova talk about mixed methods research as an approach that integrates or mixes quantitative and qualitative methods of data collection and analysis to address the research problem more fully and to obtain the answers to both quantitative and qualitative questions within a single study. So if you remember from last week, I had you all write out your own definitions for mixed methods research, whatever they were at the time, and I had you underline some of the key words or phrases from your definition. And I want you to consider this definition from page 6 from Plano Clark and Ivankova and think about what are some of the key words or phrases that you're seeing here that might also be reflected in your own definitions. So take a minute to consider that now. In my next slide here, I've underlined some of the key words and phrases here. So first off, we start off with integrate or mixing. You'll notice that, especially in comparison to the Hesse, Bieber, and Johnson editorial, this idea of integrating or mixing is really key to Vicky's framework for mixed methods research, as well as Ivankova and other mixed methods researchers in the field. Also here, you'll notice that they talk about how it's important to focus on the methods of data collection and analysis, and that the kind of purpose or rationale behind using mixed methods research, according to Plano Clark and Ivankova, is to try and address a research problem more fully and to obtain answers to at least two sets of questions. And ultimately, this is happening within a single study. So this is a very specific definition. We'll spend more time on various definitions for mixed methods research next week. In our second article from Hesse, Bieber, and Johnson, this was an editorial in the Journal for Mixed Methods Research. They very generally conceptualize mixed methods research, so it's a little bit different from Plano Clark and Ivankova. Here, they want us to focus on a plurality of methodological approaches and philosophical perspectives that are happening in a particular study. So for example, you might see Hesse, Bibber, and Johnson arguing that studies that take a giant quantitative survey with some open-ended questions and focus with some analysis on the open-ended questions, they might consider that approach to research as an example of mixed or multiple method research, whereas I think we could argue Plano, Clark, and Ivankova would not conceptualize that as mixed methods research. So here you should be starting to understand that identifying your definition for mixed methods research is going to ultimately be a way of framing yourself in the field, which researchers you align yourself with, and then ultimately how this is going to impact the rest of your research design. So again, we'll talk more about other examples of definitions for mixed methods research next week. So mixed methods research, depending on how you conceptualize it, might be used to more fully or completely address a research question or the general investigation of some kind of phenomenon. It's also used as a way to identify more justifiable results, as Plano, Clark, and Ivankova identified. But really the foundational principle to mixed methods research is the idea that it will build on strengths and weaknesses of multiple approaches, bringing them together. So again, you're going to see Plano, Clark, and Ivankova spending a lot of time talking about the multiple approaches as being the two main approaches, quantitative and qualitative research. I emphasize multiple approaches because I would also argue that arts-based research should be considered its own separate approach as well. You can see that in terms of this assumption to mixed methods research, this empirical study that you read for this week from Buck and colleagues used their qualitative results in order to better understand their findings from the quantitative data. So they had a large amount of quantitative data that they tried to understand more fully, and they were able to take excerpts from the qualitative results in order to feed into some of their final inferences and conclusions. Hesse, Bibber, and Johnson also talk about how some research questions in general might require the use of multiple methods. In both instances, with both sets of researchers or methodologists here, you'll notice that the focus is going to be on those research questions in particular. Talking more specifically to Hesse, Bibber, and Johnson, they argue that the focus for mixed methods research can be on multiple forms of data collection, formulating some kind of best systematic research design for a particular question, and also connecting yourself as a researcher to a political movement where we're trying to reduce the bias for a particular set of research approaches. So in some fields, you'll find that quantitative approaches to research are highly valued over qualitative and vice versa. So for some folks, using mixed methods research is actually a political action to make a stance that both have some kind of affordance to the study of a particular phenomenon in that field. So you'll see that within the mixed methods field, people are interested in the use of mixed methods practice for different reasons. So again, the fundamental principle for mixed methods research is built upon this idea that integrating or mixing data and results within certain approaches will help build on their complementary strengths and weaknesses. When we talk about the history of mixed methods research and how it's developed next week, we'll notice that this comes from the complementarity hypothesis, that quantitative and qualitative approaches to research can build on one another. So Plano, Clark, myself as a mixed methods researcher, and others believe that mixed methods research is really about building on these complementary ideas and approaches to inquiry from multiple data collection and analysis procedures. You will find also that the amount of, or the degree of integration here necessary for the particular mixed method design is actually up for debate in the field of mixed methods. So some folks say that how I might conceptualize integration, the stress that I place on it, or the stress that, for example, Vicki or John Cresswell place on integration is not as important to other mixed methods researchers. The Plano-Clark and Ivankova chapter for this week also laid out a social and ecological framework for mixed methods research. You'll notice that as we go along in the semester, this framework was hugely important for how they set up their book and why they organized it in the particular way that they did. In their discussion of this, they talk about how they see mixed methods research as part of a system of interwoven influences on one another, that you cannot separate out the particular researcher's beliefs about ethics or philosophical assumptions from the influence on their relationship with participants or how they operate in a particular team. You can also see here that your definition for mixed methods research, your rationale for why you're using it, what you perceive as high quality mixed methods research, how you're interacting with other approaches, and then the specific design that you're using, all of these components, which they call mixed methods research content, impact the mixed methods research process. That your foundational assumptions or beliefs about these things influence your research questions, your methods, and then the inferences you can gather from your results. You'll notice too here that Plano-Clark and Ivankova, as well as Hesse, Bibber, and Johnson, place research questions at the key here. That some research questions will dictate particular methods, which will dictate particular inferences. So for this week, I've set up 2 discussion board posts for you to consider and write about, and both of which relate to some of the major course learning outcomes. In discussion board 1, this is an application level assignment. I want you to, after having read the empirical study for this week, fill in the social and ecological framework template that I've posted. This discussion board will help you develop 2 important skills for mixed methods research. First is identifying key components to a mixed methods study or deciphering what is missing, and also creating visuals related to a mixed methods study. So later in the semester, you'll work out trying to create research diagrams to detail the data collection and analysis procedures. So I want you to fill in a blank version of this based on the Buck et al. Study that you read for this week. This discussion board post then relates to course learning outcome number 1. In discussion board number 2, you're going to be doing a reflection. In this, I want you to answer this overall question and respond to at least 2 peers, one of whom should not be in your same program. So you can use the socio and ecological framework to help frame your discussion. In this discussion board post and in the discussion board post number 1, you should have your original posts up by January 20th at 4 p.m. and then your responses should be posted by January 22nd at 4 p.m. This discussion board post relates to course learning outcome number 7. Then for next week, we will be meeting in class as at the regular time and date on Monday. There will be 2 readings. One is more of a theoretical reading about how to define mixed methods research. The second reading is study number 2. This is our second empirical study that we'll look at. And then I've posted about 5 excerpts of different definitions for mixed methods research. I want you to check out those. And then also bring in a copy, either paper or electronic, of the mixed methods research definition as posted on Wikipedia, and we're going to talk about that in relation to the others. Thank you very much, and I will see you on the discussion board and then in class. next week.